Hello friends, welcome back to Player's Companion. As always, I'm Dustin.
I'm Haley.
And today we are here to answer a question that's been burning in the back of our minds for a little bit. Recently, we were discussing Legend of the Five Rings and why that was one of our favorite game systems. Yeah. And we're talking about how its game system has potential for great stories and great drama, and also like the characters are the most in-depth of probably any system that we've ever played. And a lot of what makes that possible is the game of 20 questions, which is a question series that when applied to your character creation not only makes your characters mechanically, but also provides a lot of really juicy details and background information that you can use to not only play your character very well, but your GM uses to create a very dramatic setting and can use a lot of really like emotional details in their world building. So we were thinking about what ways could we adapt the 20 questions to apply it to Dungeons and Dragons. And we've created a list of 20 questions, and we're going to kind of go through those and apply those to this. We've divided these 20 questions into 4 sections. So first off, in the groundwork or basic D&D framework section is still number 1, what is your class? Class is still usually people think of first about their characters, they know what they want to play.
So you can either think ahead into what subclass you want to go into. I want to do the Swarm Ranger or something like that. Or just choose your class and then just kind of see how your character interacts with the game and how that might change their path.
Secondly, also traditionally, is what is your race? We get human, dwarf, elf. That is also a very definitive thing you need to kind of know about your character. Thirdly, what is your name? Or any alias that you may go by. What do people call you? Your fourth question is, what is your background? Now, we're going to see a lot of questions that answer this in more depth, but it's still part of D&D's mechanics, and you can't really get away from it because your background gives you skills, languages, starting equipment, things like that. So you still always have to kind of know what type of archetype you need to be it urchin, outsider, maybe the other traditional ones. But as you're answering that question, think about how it's going to dovetail into more detailed things later. Now, for questions 5 and 6, we borrowed a little bit from Vampire the Masquerade, because number 5 is your demeanor, and number 6, what is your true nature? Your true nature would be closest to what is your alignment. Because again, Dungeons & Dragons, well, a lot of people think that alignment is outdated, and in some ways it is. It's still mechanically important in a lot of games because you have things like detect evil as a spell, so you have to know if you're going to trigger that or not with your alignment.
Well, I personally like alignment. I don't think that anybody should go into the game feeling attached to their alignment because nobody is exactly as their alignment is. But I think especially when you're starting off at level 1 or if you're a new player, I think it really helps get an idea of how to play your characters.
But that said, again, there's 2 sides to every person, and I like that the old White Wolf games really capture that. There's the side that you show the world, and there's the side that you only show to yourself, only you know, your internal monologue. So with question number 5, what is your demeanor? That is, what is the side of yourself that you show the world? Are you a class clown? Are you altruistic? I really recommend looking up the list of what the demeanors and true natures are from White Wolf as a nice guideline for that. And then in addition to alignment, again, what is your true nature? Think about how you really perceive the world in your mind. Are you a manipulator? Are you a martyr? What is your real thought process? You can greet the world with a smile, but maybe you're secretly plotting revenge inside. Those first 6 questions lay out the groundwork, the framework for any Dungeons & Dragons characters. And those, aside from rolling your stats, are basically the entirety of what a Dungeons & Dragons character is. And these questions are here to kind of force you to fill in those boxes and really, again, amp up the drama. And drama is our second section. Again, it's only 2 of the 20 questions, but I want to emphasize that I think these 2 might be amongst the most important, because they really give your dungeon master something to play with and really, again, ramp up tension in your game. These 2 questions were referred to in the original L5R books as Ninjo and Giri. But essentially, they can be translated over to question number 7, what is your duty, or who do you serve? And question number 8, what is your personal desire? So Giri was the idea that everyone has a master, and this is especially true in Dungeons and Dragons, where unless you are starting as like a king or a noble of some sort, and it's possible, but even then you're probably not the highest ranked noble. You're doing jobs because you have something to do. You have money that you want to collect, or someone that you need to save, or maybe you are under the command of a king or a patron, someone who's given you a task. Or
even if you're like a hermit, because it's like, well, how do you do that? Well, you serve nature.
Yeah, serving nature is certain things, especially for druids. Any of the clerics or paladins would serve a god or a higher purpose. Yeah, rangers also. But they have a job, a task that they feel they need to do. And usually with a druid, you have a druidic circle. It might be a higher ranked druid, or maybe a ranger master, someone that you serve. Or again, just a job that always gets in the way. And this is the important part with number 8, what is your personal desire? Because that should be something that is in conflict with the two. One of the best examples of this that I give when people have asked, what do those mean? How do they conflict? Is Spider-Man, because his personal desire is honestly to be normal. He wants to have a normal life. He wants to settle down with Mary Jane. He wants Aunt May to be okay. Yeah. He doesn't really like being a superhero in a lot of ways because it puts a lot of burden on him. But his duty is to Uncle Ben, or to his feeling of responsibility. And that creates a lot of issues in like the comics where Aunt May is dying. Yeah. He's got to get medicine across to her. But then Dr. Octopus is robbing a bank at the same time and holding a hostage. So now he has to make the personal call. Does he go and help his family and do what he wants to do as a normal person, or does he stop and possibly endanger his aunt to go save innocent civilians and stop the criminal? And that is dramatic tension. Having two things that are in conflict with each other about your character. Again, one, something you want to do personally, but the thing you want to accomplish in your life, or that you have to accomplish in your life, is something that your storyteller, your game master, can really draw from in order to create tension and difficult decisions that make the game really memorable.
Yeah, I think that these two questions like add the most depth to a character that you don't really get from D&D, because that's been my biggest complaint about D&D, is that it's really hard to figure out what I want to do with my characters and things, because I don't have enough of building blocks that are provided for me to really know what I want them to be.
Our third section is the world, or populating the world around the character. Most of us as people, as characters, are largely defined, not entirely, but for a large part, by our relationships with other people. I think all of us are a combination of bits and pieces that we carve out of other people and kind of make ourselves. And of course, our personal tragedies and beliefs and hopes and things are often pinned onto other people. So having a good supporting cast for your character really can't be understated in its importance. Question number 9, what is your family relationship? I know it's tempting for everyone to be tragic orphans in their role-playing story. And maybe you are, but still, do you have any other extended family before they died? What was your relationship with your family like? Did they have any pivotal last words to give to you? Maybe you still have a very loving, doting mother and father back at home. Maybe there'll be hostages later in the game. I don't know, but you should really think about how you were raised. What was your upbringing? Did you love your family? Did you not? Did they understand you? Were you the black sheep? Those can be very important to figuring out how your character reacts with other people and how they were shaped. Next, what are your personal relationships? Now, those go beyond family. And in this case, I'm thinking about, what are your friends like? Who are your enemies? And I suggest that for every player, they give their DM something to work with. So I recommend that everyone have at least one friend or lover and at least one enemy character to work with. If you have more, great. So it'd be excellent if you had if you were a Frodo-ish character and you had Sam, Merry, and Pippin. You got 3 different friends to play with that can be there offering advice or giving support, or going off on their own adventures. Same with enemies, 1 or 2 enemies spread throughout there, be it a major one.
Bagginses.
Sackville Bagginses. Somewhere though that you can, those would be a great like minor foe.
Yeah.
And then you have one like maybe major guy who's an enemy on a horseback who's been trying to steal something from you. But people you've encountered in your life, and they don't all be big.
Rival bard.
Think about putting in personal bonds that can be drawn back upon and recur throughout the game and make for really good surprises and things. Mm-hmm. Question 11. would be, what factions are you a member of, or what factions do you at least have a strong opinion of? Now, you don't have to necessarily, again, join every faction, but if you are a part of one, it's important to define it. Every game has a lot of factions, and I think that's part of how you kind of build or differentiate characters for a lot of them. In Vampire the Masquerade, you have the different houses. Of course, this is borrowing from Legend of the Five Rings. You got the different factions there. But in Dungeons and Dragons, unlike those other ones, you aren't necessarily required to join one or have one in your background, but there are still a lot of them. You have like the Harpers and
the Zents and Xants.
Yeah, the Zentrum and the Xanatar Guild, and all kinds of different factions that
Thieves
are peppered.
Guild.
Yeah, Thieves Guilds. Everything's peppered throughout. And while your character as a rookie adventurer especially might not have really run into them or have been offered membership yet, they should at least have a strong opinion a lot of times about them. Like, do they think the Harpers are good, or do they overstep their bounds? Do they think the Thieves Guild are criminals, or maybe have kind of a hidden nobility about them?
And I think this is one that would be helpful to talk to your DM about, to see what factions are going to come into play, so that you're not just creating one that's going to not come into the story at all.
Right. And again, because this is thinking about story building, drama building, tension, what factions will interfere with your life or give you an opportunity to interfere with them in a way that creates a fun adventure, a cool conflict of some sort. Question number 12, who is your mentor, or who have you learned the most from? So again, just providing some background for your character. You're already a certain class when you start the game, even though you're only level 1, but you're already a rogue or a fighter or something. Like, you obviously have learned some skills. Where did you get those skills from? This is something that, again, just provides some nice background for your DM to work with, provides a character that they can have you bump into as a foil, or someone, again, who can provide guidance or die dramatically during the game. And where would Star Wars be if New Hope didn't have Obi-Wan Kenobi leading Luke Skywalker into the world, only to die and provide his own level up in that way through witnessing that tragedy? So the final section is something we call individuality. So these are the last individual traits or quirks that a character has that makes your, again, tiefling rogue stand up from any other tiefling rogue or whatever other race and class combination. Why are you not just a generic NPC, or obviously somebody who is going to go on to become important in the world and in this story? With question number 13, we start with how do you stand out? Usually we think of like, what is a talent that you have? And this can be something related to your character class that you've already chosen, like you're very stealthy or silent, or can, picket pocket somebody or something like that, or you're good with the blade. It's filling in what is a talent that your character has that isn't otherwise informed by combat. So this could be something like, you have a musical instrument that you're good at. Even though you're not a bard, you could still have that skill. Right. And in Dungeons & Dragons, that carries over to game or instrument or tool proficiencies. But this could be something else that's not really encountered by that. Can you stand on your head because you're dexterous?
Well, I'll give an example of my gnome bard character had a fox that she rescued. So she's small enough to ride him. So she does acrobatics off of him. Your
characters are supposed to be individuals of exceptional talent or strength or intelligence. So what is something that your character does that exemplifies that? So again, with standing out in a crowd, question number 14 is, what is the first thing that people notice about you? This is more of a physical thing, but it could also be some way that you dress, something you carry, the fox that your other character always had with her, but some sort of a thing, a noticeable trait that makes you unique. Could you have a battle scar that stands out? Are you missing an arm or a leg?
Broken horn.
This is just kind of flavor, but again, it can also be turned into a tool for your dungeon master. Maybe if you have a broken horn and you go into a social setting or a shop, somebody calls you out for it, and now you've got the potential for a bar fight on your hand. Or you can just show off your personality by how you react to these things. If you're a flashy dresser, describe yourself every day when you dress going into a room. Do you have a strange object that you've got you found in a dungeon or in a field somewhere that you carry with you? Are you always fidgeting? What is that's going to make you stand out? And how are NPCs, other PCs, going to be attracted to or distracted or deterred from you by that feature? Question number 15, what is your greatest accomplishment so far? Even as level 1 characters, you're supposed to have done something or done something that usually makes you stand out. It informs your class, it informs your skills. Usually you have done something of renown that is what makes people call to you to take of your adventure. It might not be anything huge. Maybe you are the best pig keeper in your village or something like that.
I also enjoy it because I think it opens up to a lot of opportunities for interaction between PCs. So if you have some like campfire downtime in between, you can share that story and interact, and then your fellow players can get to know your character better.
The opposite side of that coin, question number 16, what is it that holds you back in life? Now, this can be a specific failure that you've had, or it can be just a character flaw that haunts you quite often. But really, you should provide your DM with something that they can throw in as a personal obstacle for you to have to overcome over time. Yeah. In some ways, this can represent itself as a skill that you don't have any proficiency in, but try to be creative with it. Is your character afraid of water? There's not really anything that represents that in the game, like mechanically, but having someone who's afraid of being in water, and maybe your DM could then impose a disadvantage when trying to swim, or you have a fear effect around water, something like that. There are a lot of unique things you can do with that. You can also think of like a personality disadvantage. Maybe your character is extremely brash, or maybe they're too boisterous and they get themselves into fights, or they're overconfident and rush into situations. They're likely to get everybody killed. There's really infinite possibilities for this. And these are things that show character growth. You have an arc, and your arc should be more than just I killed the bad guy or I got what I want. How do you grow? And again, kind of a two-sided next pair of questions. Number 17, what do you do that makes you feel at peace? This is something that I think is good for downtime. A lot of games kind of skip over downtime, or just be like, do you guys want to shop?
Long rest, short rest.
Yeah, very, very basic, but you don't always want to spend a lot of time on these because all the players want to get moving with the game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you are still trying to play a human character. And so it's good to think of like, what do you do in your downtime? What do you have any hobbies or artistic endeavors? What do you do that relaxes you?
Well, and there are hobbies that can come into play too. Like if you're an artist, you might create a painting to bribe someone or to impress someone and get them to side with your group or something like that as well.
Right. So this would be something that you can incorporate into the story. It can also just be like fun character detail. In Legend of the Five Rings, this did have a direct mechanical application as your characters build up mental stress or anguish, and doing the activities that make you feel at peace kind of get rid of that. You can incorporate that into your game as well, or your characters maybe build up exhaustion or otherwise maybe get disadvantages because they're under a fear effect or under some sort of a stress, and doing this peaceful mechanic is something that alleviates that problem or gets rid of that exhaustion. The other side of that, question number 18, what is your fear? You could also think of what is a concern or a foible that you have. Fear is the best or easiest way to kind of express that, though. These are things that give your character anxiety, and it kind of plays into or can be attached to what holds you back in a way as well, that other previous question. But this can be something that is, again, very specifically driving to give your character anxiety, give them pause. This could be something, again, physical like water or fire, but it could also be social settings like I'm afraid of speaking in public places. It's one of the most common, And what could be interesting would be that this would be something you could reflect in your feats or skills by saying, well, I'm not very good at speaking, I'm afraid of it, so I have no charisma. But on the other hand, you could have very high charisma and very high persuasion skills, but you're still afraid of speaking. Yeah. And it could really play against your strengths and make for some very interesting situations.
And something else that could create a lot of conflict as an adventurer is if you're like, I'm afraid of a certain monster. So if you come across an owlbear, like your character freezes up, and how do you react in that moment? How do you get around it?
And this is something that leads to a lot of dramatic kind of like risk and reward that your DM can put into the game. So if you're going to cross something that you're afraid of, or something that again gives your character great anxiety, and they confront it and do so successfully, be through like a will save or something, or even just really great role playing, you could reward that with inspiration. If something happens where they failed it or decide their character would not want to push through and they run away from that, maybe that could put exhaustion or negatives or just have another in-game kind of consequence to it where you failed to confront like a person that you were afraid of. If you didn't confront that, does it reflect in something that you've now lost out on? Or do other NPCs view you differently for showing that fear and not overcoming it? Question number 19, what is your reaction to stress? Now, this is something that is usually going to be more of like a character detail that's there for flavor or to inform how you act in the game and really help you act out the persona of your character. But it can be played up also to a very big extent in a social situation in a game and really create consequence for your characters, and some clever role-playing and DM storycraft can really go a long way here. This could be something like you get nervous sweats, itching, do you curse more? When you have a fit of rage, do you break things? Something like that.
Lash out at people.
Still being forced to exhibit nervous tics, twitches, or extreme outbreaks of anxiety and stress can still lead to some very interesting social conflicts in the game, and it really shouldn't be understated. So the final question, and this is really more of an existential one, and again, right from L5R, but decided it was interesting to keep it on the list, which is how will you die? So this is kind of a personal vision, and you can view it as both as a player, how do you think your character will die? Yeah, and as a character, how does your character think they will die? One or the other, or both, could really be applied to this. But again, this could be something that you think your character will eventually move towards. What dramatic situation you see eventually claiming them, or even maybe an ignoble death, or something that's ironic, something to share with your DM. Likewise, the player, the character could also have their own idea, like, I want to die nobly, I want to go out saving people, or I'd like to die just as an old person in my sleep, peacefully. But this creates the idea of a destiny that you think you have, or that your character thinks they might have. And your DM can really play around with, you're going to meet that fate, and maybe here it is, or
maybe you don't deserve it.
Yeah, or maybe it moves away from you, and now you feel kind of distraught because this idea that you had as what your character is moving towards, what were their final moments going to be, now maybe are kind of robbed from them. It's a question that doesn't necessarily have to inform the game as far as like mechanics, how you actually play it, but it's an interesting, again, kind of existential thought to have in mind.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to consider because D&D is so perilous, and death is a possibility in the game. So I think it's an interesting thing to consider and kind of see what ends up happening to your character, but also just something to kind of keep in mind to help your character work towards being who they want to be.
Right. And, what's interesting, too, with that question, them incorporating that on that list that changes your characters a bit, is that when we're playing as heroes on a printed page, we're not really confronted with our own potential mortality in the same way that we are in real life. And so that does make you more of a hero a lot of times, because you're not afraid to jump out and, maybe take a shot that was intended for another player character, or go confront a dragon, because, what happens if you die? You just write up another character. But it does ask you to think about, as a character, what do they think of death? And are they afraid of it? And when do they want it to happen, if they ever do want it to happen? Do they want to go out in a blaze of glory, or are they trying to go out as a family man who's accomplished everything they wanted with their lives? So it can really change how you play your character, and it's an interesting addition that's really not in any other game, but it could be. It really is the final question in love, in very definite ways. Okay, so that is the list of 20 questions. The game of 20 questions, getting carried over with the Legend of the Five Rings, and our suggested modifications to it that you can use for Dungeons and Dragons, or in this case, Adventures in Rokugan. And again, you can take those same questions and with a few small modifications, honestly apply them to any other RPG out there. Shadowrun, One Ring. Vampire already has their own kind of version of it, but this could certainly be interesting to apply it to that and see how that pans out. But really just, your aim is to get more in-depth characters with a more definite kind of vision for your play style and elements for dramatic creation for your dungeon master.
And if nothing else, like I said, just to kind of know what you want to do with your characters, just get a better idea of what your character is doing in this world and why they're adventuring.
But regardless, I think this can be a great way to pump up your characters, take them to the next level, and make them more fully fleshed out, realized characters worthy of being the main heroes of a story. So next, in our follow-up video, Haley's going to take those 20 questions and apply them to a new character that she's going to create. and you can kind of see how they help you really flesh out the dramatic potential of that character. So we will see you over there.
Thanks for watching.